Hello, Paolo. Thank you very much for joining us today.
Man.
Now, obviously, DHL as a company needs no introduction, but perhaps you could talk us through the pharma-specific side of DHL supply chain management and how this differs from the standard side of supply chain.
Okay, thank you. Yes, if you don't mind, I will start from what we can say like the common element of the industry and the way we focus on the industry. It's actually to really start to focusing on understanding our customer needs and trying to really aim to become the recognized partner for our customer and providing value. And then, of course, that really means that you need to put in place different solutions and different focus according to the industry where we actually are based on. And in specific, life science and healthcare is one of our what we call key sector. And if we talk about pharma, if we talk life science, we actually don't stop at the sector level. We actually go down in what we call the subsector element. And the way we start looking at this is identify what we can call the critical success factors. So what we call the must-have, the key point that you need to have in order to be able to be successful in there. And I don't know if we can take you through a little bit on these ones.
By all means.
I will start definitely from what we call the global infrastructure. And of course that means for us to have dedicated sites and dedicated for the industry. We can count approximately 150 in our footprint around the globe. We also need to have quality, and quality means reliability and quality of the products and the services that we provide. And I would say the pharma element of this is that we are not only challenged by the customers, so from the external, but there is also quite an important challenge that it comes from our the 150 pharma quality assurance people dedicated to the industry. Then it goes into another very big component, the people expertise. That has to be across the entire supply chain. So basically we talk about warehouse distribution, the transportation, air freight, sea freight, and of course also the courier and transport on the local ground. And then we can count, of course, dedicated people. Customer preference at the end of it. But the key differentiator is the value-added services that are really, an element that makes this industry quite interesting in particular. And I would say this starts from best practices that we can have all around the places, and starting from looking at innovation, putting in place simplicity, and using, of course, the strength, for example, our innovation center in Bonn, where we can actually really try to figure out what differentiates us from the competition or from the market itself.
So if you can maybe give me some examples of a positive impact of using a 3PL company like DHL.
Yes, of course. I would say the key point in terms of the use of 3PL in this industry is related to geographies, areas, history behind. And I guess the key point is how companies or pharma companies are really reliable on finding 3PL company. They're able to at least guarantee the same level of quality, consistency that they have in their in-house operations. And I guess you can see that difference in markets where this has been quite an historic element where the outsourcing is very high. A common trend that we're seeing is, though, that more and more companies are looking into the outsourcing. And the reason behind it is, or one of the key reasons, I would say, is the fact that the 3PL can really support them and try and start from the recognition that this company realize that the capability of them or the reliability of responding to cost pressure they have today, responding to the changes or the need to put in place an agile supply chain, adaptive supply chain, are not really able to be answered in a proper way in-house. So more and more we see this trend going out. And then when you start to really realize the role of a 3PL is able to really provide consistency in this response. If you look into that, there are situations where a 3PL is able to really provide a structure, an agile structure, able to really adapt to the changes that pharma company could have in their channel strategy. We have example of a company basically switching quickly, for example, the stock location in one market area according to the different channel strategy that we put in place. Of course, there is a consistency, there is a recognition of the importance of the supply chain as a strategic element. And again, it looks like sometimes we're just replicating excellence, but it's not really only that. I believe you need to build, the excellence, and where you can actually try to perceive the 3PL as the real enabler to help, in transform the healthcare industry. We have a situation helping customer enter a new market, helping them to really deploy their channel strategy. So there are several examples in this respect on how 3PL can support that.
Absolutely. So what have been then the key developments that you've had to your strategy? Obviously, there have been huge changes in the last couple of years, both economically and environmentally, both of which are going to affect an international supply chain. So how have you seen your strategies develop?
The strategy, of course, or the development that we actually had in the last few years was, to really invest, in the industry. The investment could sound like, we just, expand a new market, increase our footprint. That's one component. I guess the other key element of investment relating to the people, the community. We need to make sure that we have, as we just said, quite a very high number of people working in this industry and dedicated to that. They need to have continuous training. And when you can really build, a kind of consistency, you need to put in place new services. You need to be really able to implement successfully things. So that means launching new services, expanding to market, providing several new things. And I guess this is the real aim of a company like ours, to really be able to listening to the needs of our customers and deploy and put in place this solution that we need to answer.
So what have been the key, the challenges then that you've come up against?
But the challenges, again, I think one of the key challenges for a company like ours is to really, and what it's not really a challenge, the aim is to really unlock the potential, that we have, the value that we have. And this really become to having really the customer, perceiving the strategic value that we can do. We can really bring synergies to them by, using our multi-user campus. And it's really up to us to making sure this is going to be, deployed. And we don't see that like changes in this respect. We just see a continuity and to always being able to properly listen to what is happening in the market and become a key reference to our customers. I guess that's the key point.
Now, I know we touched briefly on the environmental changes that have happened in recent times. So when you do come up against these shocks to the supply chain, particularly with reference to things like temperature controlled and cold storage, which are particularly poignant in the pharmaceutical industry, how do you cope with those?
Definitely cold chain is already a dramatically important element of the supply chain. It's more and more, because regulation are getting more important. The rise of biotech company really create more and more emphasis, I would say, in that. There is, of course, a level of knowledge and expertise into that translate in not only in the part of the business where I'm at, so the warehousing or the packaging area, but also related to our LTL product, the air freight product we provide, ocean freight. But again, I think the key element on that is based on a few things. And I would say first one is to have control. To really have a tight control, you need to have procedures in place. You need to have the products, and you need to have a very strong focus into that in order to be able to, again, to be reliable in providing services, especially in the cold chain part of the business.
So in your session, you're going to be discussing how an adaptive supply chain can respond to market changes and increasing customer focus. Perhaps if you could define DHL's definition of an adaptive supply chain and briefly explain the benefits and challenges of implementing that.
Yeah, in adaptive supply chain, I would say start from the understanding, the recognition of the need to be flexible, improve the flexibility while improving the efficiency. So the two things together really are the component of what we call an adaptive supply chain. It really means to have a supply chain more and more driven by the customer demand. When we say customer demand, of course, we need to specify from the final customer. So in our way, it's like looking at the supply chain and trying to really focus in on the final, the downstream of the supply chain, and making sure to bring the benefits that are actually passed over to actually who sits upstream to supply chain.
So is this a segmentation strategy then?
But it's not really a segmentation strategy. It's the recognition that if you're able to move from what is called like a traditional, let me say, pull strategy, where the manufacturing, the long cycle of the products, and basically you actually produce and send the product out into the chain, it's a recognition that if you're able to delay to the very, let me say, closest point to your final customer, the differentiation, you can get a lot of response, positive response. And the response positive are the appreciation, of course, of the final customer. But actually this translates in a lot of benefits along the chain to actually sit upstream, so the pharma company. Benefits such as customization, benefits in inventory, not only reducing inventory, of course, has a quite positive impact, but also to avoid that you need to incur into an extra cost, maybe for redo the packaging in a situation where you were not planning it. Again, put a lot of, let me say, less, not important, but dramatically important, what we call is the forecasting and the demand planning. That in today's environment, where the treatment length, the seasonality of some products, the need to adapt to the different strategy in the channels really requires to make sure that you're able to differentiate that solution out, for example, postponement, that is really one of the key elements that can really provide or be the enabler of an adaptive supply chain. Going back to basically the understanding of how the supply chain can really become a strategic element and the impact on that. Challenges. The challenges I would say are related to challenge the traditional business or the traditional approach that companies have. But there are many good examples in this respect where you actually sit down, re-engineering the supply chain, and you really look in a different way. But the benefits are huge, and there are a lot of appreciation in this respect.
Well, I'm very much looking forward to hearing more about that in your session at Logic Pharma. So thank you very much for speaking to us. We are now unfortunately out of time, but yes, I will see you then.
Thank you very much.
Cheers.
Thank you.